Hello and welcome to Guelph GradCast, the only podcast dedicated to bringing you real conversations with real University of Guelph grads. As always, I'm your host, Ryan, and today I'm very lucky to be joined by Moronke Harris. She graduated from the University of Guelph's Biological Science program in 2017, and I'm going to have to take a deep breath here to kind of go through some of her accomplishments as best I can because there's a lot to go through. But since then, she's gone on to become an award-winning deep sea explorer, specializing in deep sea ecosystems, extreme environments, and has spent over 170 days at sea. She's currently completing her graduate studies in oceanography at the University of Victoria. And on top of all that, she's also an incredible science communicator and artist and the founder of the Imaginative Scientist, a science communication and creative consulting brand. And she even did a TED Talk, which is, I think, right now approaching 60,000 views. So if you haven't seen it, I suggest checking it out. It's fantastic. Welcome to the podcast. How are you today?
Thank you. I'm doing very well. How are you?
Not bad. I can't complain. You're in Victoria, right?
Yes, I am
Yeah.
West Coast now.
Nice, nice. Well, back here in Guelph, it's a little snowy, so we're enjoying it as best we can. So I want to start things off talking about why we're here today. I want to get into obviously all the cool things you're doing, but kind of talk about why you chose the University of Guelph and why you chose the program that you did. What kind of first drew you to the program and the University of Guelph?
Yeah, well, I chose biological sciences because I knew I wanted to be in science. And I wasn't a huge fan of physics or chemistry, so I knew that that was the stream I wanted to explore. And I really liked the fact that the program didn't niche down just yet. So I was able to take a large variety of science courses and kind of figure out where in biology I wanted to go. Because when I first started my undergrad, I had no idea that I would end up in marine science. I was actually thinking about med school for a while, then I considered vet school for a little bit, and eventually I landed on marine sciences. But I also chose Guelph as a school largely because of the community. Guelph has a really great communal aspect to learning, and the feeling on campus is very community oriented as well. So it just felt like a great place to start my life separate from my parents' house.
Yeah, yeah. Had you known much about the University of Guelph before you started kind of applying? Like, what was it kind of your perception or knowledge about it beforehand?
Not much knowledge. I did a campus tour, one campus tour before applying, but outside of that, I didn't know much about it. I had known that it was a great school for biology because of OBC, the vet college. So that's one of the reasons why I chose it as well. It is aligned in several different aspects.
Yeah, yeah. I hear that a lot where people will do a tour and they're like, "Oh, this place is gorgeous. I love the vibe. I want to
Yeah,
go
and the
here."
food was a draw too. It has the best food, so
It does. It does. Officially we do. We're not even just, making stuff up here. We generally have the best food, which as someone who never really spent that much time at other schools, had no idea that that was a thing. Like I just thought all food at universities tastes like it, but apparently that's not a thing.
no, we've been spoiled.
Yeah, yeah. And were you based in Ontario?
Yeah,
Like,
I'm from Richmond Hill originally, so just north of
nice.
Toronto.
So not
So
too
it was
far.
just yeah, an hour and a half drive away, so it was a nice opportunity to stay close-ish to home because I was pretty shy back then,
Right.
but still branch out on my own as well.
And then kind of once you got into the program, you started kind of getting into the school. Um, did it meet kind of your expectations, or was there anything that kind of surprised you once you started getting through the program and being a university student at the University of Guelph?
It definitely met my expectations. I got a lot of different laboratory experience, and I got a lot of different coursework experience within biological sciences, so everything I wanted to come to the University of Guelph for was met.
Nice. Was there anything that kind of like stood out to you in terms of like anything you learned, or like a particular professor, like, oh, that professor was great, or I love that one subject?
Yeah, Dr. Elizabeth Boulding, she taught I forget what the course was called now, but it was one of the first marine ecology courses I ever took, and her passion for the topic is kind of what encouraged me to pursue the field that I'm in now, and we connected and she had me volunteering in her lab, which led to internships after graduation, which led to grad school currently, so she really helped me get my foot in the door in the industry that I'm in now, and in terms of courses outside of marine ecology, I really like the parasitology course as well because we got to dissect fish, and take slides of different tissues from the fish and kind of diagnose which bacteria or which parasites we were seeing within the fish. So that was something that I had never been able to experience before. It was really hands-on, and I
Yeah,
learned
yeah.
a lot in that course as well.
And what was it about like marine ecology and the kind of the ocean and all that that drew you in? Like, was there something about it that you found inherently fascinating, or was there a certain, piece of knowledge that someone gave you and like opened a door and expanded your mind? You had like this breakthrough kind of moment, like, oh, this is what I want to do.
Yeah, just how little we knew, which is why I'm in deep sea exploration now. Just, I guess, the statistics, the fact that we have visually seen less than 1% of the sea floor, and we've mapped less than, or just over now, 20% of it. But at the time when I was in grad school, it was not grad school, undergrad, it was under 20% of the seafloor that we had mapped. So that was what drew me in, the intrigue and the fact that there was so much that you could discover if you went into this field because there was so little that we knew. And I specifically study hydrothermal vents, which are these ecosystems on the seafloor that run off of chemosynthesis instead of photosynthesis. So they are superheated geysers up to 400 degrees Celsius, 1,000 to 4,000 meters down that like spew all of these chemicals and metals and minerals, and the entire ecosystem that subsists off of these chemicals is down there completely different from anything we've seen on land because of the chemicals that provide for it. So once I learned about hydrothermal vents, which was in the marine ecology course that I was taking, it was definitely an aha moment for me because I started watching more and more YouTube videos about them and reading journal articles, and it really drew me in as just this alien world that we knew so little about because they were only discovered in 1979, and there was just so much to learn. Yeah.
That's amazing. Uh, so that kind of brings me to something I want to bring up, and I'm going to ask you a question, and I don't want to get you any hot water with a certain fan base because I think that you might, but I'll lead with this, and I'll say, so in 1966, NBC would debut a groundbreaking new TV show that would, although it would be canceled after only 3 seasons, would go on to become like this big pop cultural phenomenon with multiple series and movies. But the series where I'm leading to started with a very famous intro and narration, and I'm sure you know exactly where I'm going with this. And it starts off by saying "Space, the final frontier." And
Yes.
so, what is it? Why do you take issue with that statement?
I don't take issue with yes, I do actually, yeah. You got me there. I, well, because I believe that the ocean is Earth's final frontier, right? So it depends on what your perspective is and what you look at as the final frontier. But I think that we should get to know and explore our own planet deeply because there's so much that we can learn from the deep sea. We can have biopharmaceuticals come from them. We can have um, climate solutions come from the deep sea as well. So the fact that we're spending all of this money to explore space is also helpful, but there's only so far that the technology can take us with our development thus far. But with the deep sea, we actually have the technology to fully do full scale exploration, but we're just not using it.
Hmm.
The funding just isn't there. So I feel like we should spend more of our time looking at the deep sea rather than
Right,
space personally. But I also
right,
like
right.
Star Trek. So
No, that's fair. That's fair. I like Star Trek too. And to be fair, I'm more of a Star Wars person, but I appreciate both. And so if you're thinking about like when you talk about like people aren't exploring it as much or seem to be more focused on space, why do you think that is? Why do you think people find space so much more interesting than what's right below us or right around us, which is this amazing universe into itself, the ocean?
I think space has better PR. There was the space race in the 1960s, and for a while, NASA actually was doing ocean exploration as well in the earlier days. But I just think, yeah, space has been um, more promoted. Space exploration in pop culture, we see it in the television shows and the movies. Um, and ocean exploration, there are people like Jacques Cousteau, which really got people gung ho for ocean exploration for a while as well. But it just hasn't been as propped up within the media as space exploration has. Space is very, alluring. And
It's
maybe,
mysterious, right?
yeah, exactly. And maybe people don't feel like the ocean is as alluring because they don't know so much about the deep sea. Yeah.
Yeah. And so after, so I'll take it back a bit. There's a bit of a segue, but taking it back to University of Guelph, and then kind of you talked about some internships. When did you what was the transition to from like, I'm a student now, but then now I want to actively pursue oceanography, kind of more as a career, and kind of a bit more about the work you're doing now. That kind of jump for schooling to what you're doing now.
It was in my last year of undergrad, where I took that marine ecology course that I had to write a literature review on a topic of my choosing. And because I had been learning about the deep sea and hydrothermal vents, I knew I wanted to do that literature review on hydrothermal vents. And then that led me into all the research that I did on them, and that solidified my decision really. But also by taking that marine ecology course, I got the chance to volunteer in some marine labs around campus that gave me experience to then apply for internships. And it was actually Dr. Elizabeth Bolding who sent me my first internship posting at it was called CABIOS, so the Canadian Associates of the Bermuda Institute of Ocean Sciences. And it's a 3-month internship, and she sent me the flyer over email, and she was like, "You should apply for this." And I didn't get it my first time, but I got it my second time, and that kind of spurred my growth towards deep sea exploration. But I started in shallow water stuff because in Bermuda I was doing artificial upwelling studies on tropical corals, just testing whether if we pump 100-meter deep water up to 5-meter deep corals or 50-meter deep water up, which is better for the corals and reducing heat stress. And it was actually the 100-meter. But you have to find that balance between temperature and nutrient and all that stuff. And then after that, I got an internship at Mote Marine Lab in Florida. So I was studying ocean acidification there and water quality testing in Sarasota Bay. And that led to another position in Vancouver, which finally brought me to the West Coast and closer to UVic, where I was able to meet my supervisor at the time, Dr. Kim Juniper. So it was just a chain of events that
Hmm.
allowed me to follow one position after another and get to where I wanted to be eventually.
Right. And so now you work as you're an ocean, like you help manage kind of deep sea explorations. Is that correct? Like I've seen like some pretty cool images of you, like almost like in a control room, and so talk to me about what that work is and how maybe a little bit about what a typical day for you would be like.
Sure, yeah. So I'm the science manager for the Ocean Exploration Trust, and that entails everything wet lab operations and science operations with the submersible as well. So on the ship, we have a team of scientists who are collecting samples with the submersibles and processing those samples when the submersible comes up. And I manage that team essentially. So make sure that we are reaching the science objectives that we need, collecting the samples we need, which is hundreds of samples each expedition. And we're at sea for over a month or about a month each time for each expedition. So it's this floating village of about 50 to 75 people that come from all over the world. And each expedition is this microcosm of people that'll never be together in quite the same way again. So you learn so much from the different scientists and their specialties, and the ROV submersible pilots who are usually engineers, and the crew and the stewards. It's great. But we work in shifts because it's a 24-hour operation. So you don't get a whole lot of sleep.
Mm.
It's definitely go, go, go for like a month at a time. And I love it personally because every time that submersible comes up, I kind of say it's like Christmas Day, or some people liken it to a paparazzi as well.
Oh, okay.
Because the submersible is the star of the show. So when it comes up with all the different biological and geological samples, then everybody just kind of swarms on it, and we organize them into bins and start shipping them into the lab. And it's really exciting.
So had you ever spent that much time on the ocean or at sea before? Like what was your experience before that?
Oh, I hadn't like a cruise ship once when I was a
Oh,
kid.
all right.
So
So you're a pro. You're like you knew it. You could, what was that like? Was that was that a unique? Were you kind of nervous the first time you had to do that, or did you have, as they
I
say, did you have your sea legs? Is that a thing?
I kind of did. I mean, I didn't get very seasick. Boning is the key if you ever need seasickness medication. They only sell
Okay,
it in the States, but it's over the counter. It's better than anything else I've ever tried. Uh,
okay.
but yeah, I was nervous mainly because the first time I went on a ship like that, I was an intern. So being the youngest person on the team is always a bit intimidating. But I loved it. I wasn't nervous about being in the middle of the sea with no land in sight. That's always been really exciting to me. So it was mainly like professional nerves rather than experience based. Yeah.
What's something that people maybe misunderstand about the ocean or being out at sea like that maybe you didn't think about even yourself when you're out there?
Mm, That's a good question. I think everybody's experience is different. Some people start to miss land. pretty severely, but I don't really experience that. I think I just kind of immerse myself into where I am in that moment. I think some people misunderstand, like some people who aren't in the field might misunderstand how comfortable the boats are, because they might sometimes when I tell people I stay at sea for like almost 30 days and they think I'm on a fishing boat in the middle of nowhere.
I mean,
But
that's what I was thinking. I was thinking like those crab fishing.
yeah,
That's the most dangerous job, and you're just wearing like permanently wearing like a yellow raincoat and one of those hats. You know.
yeah, it's definitely not like that in deep sea exploration. We have pretty comfortable ships with a lot of technology, and I mean the smallest ship I've been on that's a deep sea exploration vessel is still 69 meters large, so it's or long, so it's pretty big, and we have all the creature comforts. There's a gym. I've been on ships where there's even been a movie theater, which was wild. That usually doesn't happen, but
What
there's
kind
a
of
lounge.
movies do you, what kind of movies do you watch on a ship like that?
Anything. We've watched sea-based movies, but we watched the B movie last time when I was at sea in July. So it really depends on what people have saved on their laptops or what's saved on the ship itself. And sometimes we play a lot of Mario Kart as well, which is great.
I think
And the
you're
food
attracting
is
a lot of people to this line of work just through that Mario Kart and movies.
and
If
the
I knew
food
that
is
was the case, I would have
too.
signed up.
Yeah.
Do you have like prior to this, you talked about kind of like your love of the ocean kind of came from your schooling, but was there anything like a movie or an individual that you kind of looked up to that made you want to study the ocean?
Yeah, definitely documentaries. Watched some Blue Planet growing up, quite a lot of it actually, Blue Planet and James Cameron's movies, and
Mm.
that actually got me piqued my interest in marine science and exploration at a really young age, but I hadn't decided to go into it until my last year of undergrad. So, but it was just amazing how media can kind of pull you into scientific fields that way. I think
Yeah.
it's important. Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. James Cameron has become such a big part of sea exploration. I'm assuming you're best friends with him.
I wish. Never met the man, but maybe one day.
Now, speaking of kind of, we talked a little bit of science to kind of pivot more to the arts and kind of your science communication brand and the Imaginative Scientist. Um, how did that come about? And I know like so I think sometimes people think about either your science or the arts, but I think you've kind of found a nice way to kind of bridge the two. You paint, you speak, and you do all these amazing things that aren't just super hard science focused. So how did that kind of come about for you?
Well, again, in childhood, I really enjoyed creating visual art and painting and drawing, and I actually would have gone to school for visual art if I didn't choose science. But well, basically, I have very traditional parents, and they asked me if I wanted to be a starving artist, and I said no. So that's why I ended up choosing science. And now I have better knowledge, and you wouldn't be a starving artist depending on how you apply yourself. But anyway, I found a way to. So the imaginative scientist was kind of my way of marrying those two passions because for a long time I thought I had to choose one or the other. So I actually stopped doing art when I went to undergrad and started fully focusing on science. So it started actually as me just going back into visual art and using my visual art to communicate scientific concepts and kind of help invite people who may not have maybe a logical scientific brain to explore scientific concepts through these images that would draw them in. And then it turned into public speaking when I got opportunities to do webinars and some seminars. And I was really nervous at first, but I actually realized that I loved public speaking and especially speaking about deep sea exploration because it's this world that so many people haven't really had a chance to peek into. And I myself found when I was trying to get into it that it's really a niche within the niche of marine science. So I kind of wanted to like pull back the curtain on what felt was like this secretive world in marine science and share how great it was with people outside of the community. And that just kind of snowballed. I mean, I told my contacts in the marine science world that I was doing this science communication thing and doing a lot of public talk speaking. And if they'd like me to come speak anywhere, I'd be more than happy to. And I got a lot of interests and a lot of word of mouth. And it ended up now with me being a science columnist on CBC radio and um, doing my TEDx talk and speaking, giving keynote speeches at science centers across Canada and conferences. It's been really great. But it has also mainly just been word of mouth because I've been working on finishing up grad school as well. So TEDx Victoria is the only thing I've ever actually applied for. Everything else has just come to me, which has been great because I get to choose the projects that I want to work on and continue to make it something that I'm passionate about. So I'm looking
Hmm.
forward to seeing where it goes beyond grad school once I
Hmm.
have that off my plate. And yeah, I'm excited to keep doing it.
Yeah, that's amazing. I actually had a chance to, well, I watched your TEDx and it was fantastic. You know, what is kind of your approach or philosophy when you're trying to like teach someone? If you're trying to like as a communicator, what do you kind of when you're taking like a complex idea, how do you unpack it? Like what's your kind of your philosophy to kind of presenting those ideas to people so that they understand it?
Mhm. The first thing I do is I put myself in their shoes, and my friends and family help a lot with this. When I'm explaining my science to them, they give me feedback on how well I've done it, since they're people who know nothing about my science. But when I'm speaking to the general public or audiences, I try to think and put myself in the shoes of someone who doesn't know anything about the topic. Like, is there jargon included that I would have to break down further? Or how would I make this the most entertaining as possible? So I usually start my talks with like inviting people into the world of deep sea exploration. I think world building is a really important and effective tool for science communication, and making people feel like they are the scientist or the ROV submersible pilot. They're immersed in this world and they're part of the team contributing. So I guess I play on emotion and being able to make sure that my words are understood and I'm not using too much jargon.
Yeah, yeah, it's such an
Yeah.
important it's such a difficult skill though. People take it for granted because sometimes if you explain something simply, people kind of think like, "Oh, that makes sense," and they don't really think about how difficult that is. Like I remember, like a piece of advice I got when it came to communication was like, think about trying to explain this to your grandma. Can you
Yeah,
would they get it? Do they understand it? And I think that
exactly.
speaks to what you're talking about. Like trying to put your mind in their shoes. Um, is there anyone, was there any like science communicator that you admired, or maybe even someone in your life that kind of taught you something in a way that you respected and you kind of felt like inspired you in some ways?
I really like the Quirks and Quarks show on
Oh yeah,
CBC
yeah,
Radio.
that's a great
Yeah.
show.
I love the way that I think Bob McDonald is
Yeah,
his
yeah,
name?
yeah,
Yeah, I love the way that he explains science. So I just felt like it was always so clear and really drew me in. And there are several different podcasts as well. Like Ologies is a great
yeah.
science communication podcast that yeah. So I mean, I feel like I've never thought too hard about how I communicate my science because I feel like it just comes really naturally to me. So I love questions like that that force me to think about what I'm actually playing on when I do it because I don't know, I kind of just do it.
No, it
Yeah.
works. It's amazing. And so right now you're working on your graduate studies. What kind of research are you working on right now? Can you talk a bit about that?
Yeah, I study hydrothermal vents.
Oh, right.
Um,
Sorry.
oh, no problem.
But
I
let,
didn't.
let's dig into it again.
Yeah. I study hydrothermal vents and I study the bacteria that live on them because I touched on the chemosynthesis earlier, but the whole
Hmm.
ecosystem around the hydrothermal vents survives off of chemosynthesis. So the chemicals coming out of the superheated water that's spewing out of these vents. And the bacteria are actually at the bottom of the food web down there because they're chemosynthetic bacteria. So they are actually what's taking those chemicals and turning it into energy for the rest of the ecosystem to subsist off of. So I study the bacterial communities and along the life cycle of a vent from a very active vent to an inactive toppling chimney, how those communities change over time because life vents have life cycles just like us as well. So yeah, and a little bit of that as well is seeing if we can turn those bacteria into biopharmaceuticals. So a little bit of bioprospecting, where we're looking for these things called biosynthetic gene clusters within the genetic material of the bacteria. And depending on how many you find and what type you find, it kind of points to whether or not that area is a good resource for um, extracting pharmaceuticals out of it. And it's the same thing, same kind of scientific concept and workflow that they use in the Amazon jungle when they're looking for natural products and drugs in the Amazon jungle and other places on Earth as well. So biosynthetic gene clusters are the very first step of looking for pharmaceuticals in nature.
Is there something like particular things that you're looking for that are more likely to have those things in it? Like, is there certain kind of attributes that you're kind of seeking out?
Yeah, well, there are two types of biosynthetic gene clusters that are really, really useful and known to be. Right now, I'm only remembering their acronyms, but it's PKS and NPRS, I think. And those are the two that have been actively turned into drugs, and sourced from several different environments on Earth. So they're the most powerful. So if you were to find a ton of those in something, then you know that it's probably promising and you could start parsing down further. But because I'm looking at the community level, because I'm taking a bunch of microbes and just taking a whole community and all of their genetics mixed together and then looking for those gene clusters, we actually don't know from my research just yet what species of microbe in that community is producing those chemicals. So somebody would have to take my work and parse down further from the community level down to the genus and species level to actually find the microbe that you want to culture to use those clusters, gene clusters in actual pharmaceuticals. So it's the first step. But yeah.
That's pretty wild. And so when you're out in the ocean, are you testing? Is it, you said there's like a lab, is there not? Like, so is there, are you
On
doing
the
some of
ship.
that testing right there to kind of know, or
No,
that happens later?
yeah, it all happens later. So my job and my research are a bit separate, but it's the same kind of, it's the same. I got my samples the same way, like on
Hmm.
those UC exploration vessels working in the labs. Um, but what we do is I actually take up pieces of hydrothermal chimney and freeze them in little 50 milliliter Falcon tubes at -80 to preserve the DNA. And then when we bring those samples back on land, I use DNA extraction kits. So you go from like a tube full of rock to like a tiny, tiny little micro tube full of clear material, maybe like 5 milliliters or 5 nanometers of or microliters, sorry,
Very,
of
very small.
fluid. Yeah, very small, tiny, tiny amount of DNA. And then you send that off to a lab to be sequenced, and all of that comes back as electronic files of DNA code that you can then go through a whole bioinformatics pathway to see what's in there. Yeah.
That's incredibly cool. Um, and so what do you have planned next? I think I know you do. Are you planning on going to Antarctica? I believe you
Yeah.
have a expedition that you're currently raising some money for, and can you speak to that?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going on this expedition with Sea Women Expeditions, and it's a team of 25 women that were selected from over 400 applications around the world. And one of my main roles on that expedition is to co-lead the submersible science team. So we're going to be I use the big 6 foot tall submersibles in deep sea exploration, but we're actually doing shallow water work in Antarctica. So we're going to be using mini ROVs that are about like this big. Maybe this you can't really see my arms, but
No, I
they're
got it. I got it.
yeah.
I guess
They're
people listening can't see it, so it's about the
yeah,
size of your face. If
yeah.
people are depending how big your face is.
Maybe like 3 feet long, I'd say,
Okay.
instead of yeah, um, 2 to 3 feet. Anyway, we'll be using those, down on Deception Island, and because this is a really geothermally active island, it's actually a sunken caldera, so they know that within the bay in the center of Deception Island, there are hydrothermal vents because of the chemical signatures that people have collected and also the bathymetric mapping that people have done show cone shapes on the seafloor, but nobody's ever actually taken a submersible down and viewed them firsthand. So we'd just like to collect some visual data so that we can see what kind of ecosystems are living around them and create a project out of that. So it's like habitat mapping and habitat formation, looking at what's down there basically. We want to search around. So that's one example of a project that we're doing. But there are several different types of scientific projects happening on this expedition. We have somebody doing cetacean studies, somebody's looking at phycology with seaweeds. There's somebody doing microplastics as well, and a woman collecting microbial samples from land. There's a lot going on, but it is volunteer led, so we all have to raise money to pay our own way to go on this expedition. And that's part of the reason why I have that GoFundMe going right now.
And I'll
Yeah.
put a link in the show notes for folks if you want to check it out and donate.
Yeah,
Sounds like a
it's a
pretty cool project.
great
Um,
opportunity to support women in science
yeah,
doing cool
absolutely.
things. Yeah.
Um, and thinking about all these places you've been to and all this work that you're doing, is there stuff that you kind of like look back at the University of Guelph that you still kind of draw from in terms of your knowledge base, or even professors or classmates that you consult with for your work you're doing?
Yeah, I actually haven't consulted with professors or classmates in a long time, but I still have friends from the university. I was friends with a lot of engineers. I spent a lot of time in the engineering building, and I still lean on them for support just and friendship as I go through grad school, just people to talk to and bounce ideas off of that way, but not really scientific support, but as I mentioned earlier in this podcast recording, Guelph is a great community school, and that's really been proven to me and been carried forward with me as I went through my building my career after leaving Guelph, because I still have all of the great friendships that I made at Guelph, and it's been almost 10 years later. So
Yeah, yeah. Is there anything you still that you maybe miss about, or kind of are like maybe a bit nostalgic or longing about, like this one spot on campus, or maybe like you talked about the food, so maybe there's one bit of food you're like, oh, I could really go for that right now.
yeah, the bull ring. I used to love the curry bowls in the bull ring, and that
Mm,
was incredible. Uh, and just hanging out in Creelman Hall as well, had great food. And I actually was in residency in Watson Hall when it was still the International Building. So
okay.
that was a great experience because it's just such a nice size of hall. We all really got to about 30 people living in that hall. So we all get to really know each other, and we got to go to other residences to go to parties and then come back to our residence, which was nice and calm, and yeah. A lot of memories.
Yeah, and you talked about like you still have friends with people, but going from like, Ontario to Victoria, middle of the ocean, is there any? Have you ever come across another Guelph grad in a surprising place that you?
Yeah, yeah, there are a ton of us here at the University of Victoria, like, so many I know I have 5 friends right now, that all did their undergrads at Guelph, and most of them overlapped with me, but we just had no idea. We didn't meet each other while we were at Guelph, but now we've met each other here at UVic. So there's actually a lot of, um transferring of students between the 2 schools because UVic also gives off that communal vibe. So that's been impressive that even out here on the West Coast, I still continued to run into a lot of great Guelph grads.
Yeah, yeah. So I don't want to keep you too much longer, but before we go, is there anything we didn't talk about that you want to talk about, or maybe one last piece of advice you'd want to give our audience, either someone who's interested in doing what you're doing or going to the University of Guelph?
Yeah, I could give one last piece of advice, and it's a piece of advice that's really carried me throughout my career so far, and that's to never self-reject. So always apply for things, even if you think you're not fully qualified, because you might get it and surprise yourself with your own skills, or you might not get it, but get the opportunity to improve and come back stronger. So let them say no. Don't say no to yourself.
That's a really good piece of advice. I really appreciate it. I'm going to take that. Never mind the audience. I'm going to use that. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me and chat with our audience. If you like what you heard today, please like and subscribe to wherever you get your podcasts. And for the latest updates, be sure to follow us on all our socials. And for more info, you can always check out uguelph.ca. And I'll put all the links to everything we talked about in the show notes. Our show's theme music is actually by Paige Rutledge, who is also another Guelph grad. And we'll be back next time with another conversation with another Guelph grad. Thank you so much for listening.